Hello, and welcome to another of our episodes at Providence talking about our environmental stewardship program. Today, we're going to spend some time talking about green teams. I'm your host, Beth Shank, Executive Director of Environmental Stewardship for Providence. And just as a reminder, a disclaimer, the information provided during this event is for educational purposes only. If you have any questions regarding medical conditions or treatment, please consult your provider. Now, let's get started. So joining me today, I'm thrilled to have this group, is Darcy Moxon, Sustainability Program Manager in Alaska, Sarah Johnson, RN Sustainability Program Manager in Montana, and Cynthia Holm, Environmental Health and Safety Manager in Southwest Oregon at Medford. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how we engage caregivers, that's employees for us in Providence, to get involved with environmental stewardship and work on projects that need to be done and that can really best be done by caregivers who know how the hospitals work on the ground. So we often call those green teams, as people do across the nation, but sometimes they're more of an affinity group or a caregiver engagement group or some sort of action group. So we're just going to take some time today to explore with these three leaders how they manage this in their areas. So I'm going to turn to them and ask each some questions, and we'll kind of go in a circle. So I'm going to start with Cynthia Holm. So Cynthia, tell us a little bit about your work in Medford, Oregon, and some examples of activities of what you're doing there for environmental stewardship.
Well, Beth, thank you for having me today, and it's a great honor to be serving in this role, as well as representing the Southern Oregon Service Area and Providence Medford Medical Center. When Rod Hochman made his proclamation in 2020 that we were going to be carbon negative by 2030 as an organization, it kind of re-energized our green team and our efforts in Southern Oregon. We always have had an eye towards the environment, but that kind of, like I said, remotivated us. And one thing we really took on as the green team that year was doing a good focus during Earth Week with regards to educating our caregivers about the We Act framework and what Providence as a whole had as a goal for being carbon negative by 2030, and kind of, like I said, sort of a re-energizing of that. Another thing that came about in that 2021 Earth Week that we did is that we had a Providence community garden. We had 12 garden boxes that had kind of been, people hadn't been keeping as much attention to them as they had in previous years. And we had a core group of gardeners, our lovely Garden of Giving group, that got together and reseeded and regrew that garden. And that first year of the Garden of Giving, we grew about 300 pounds of food. The following year, as some of you might recall, we had the Almeda fire down here in our area. And the previous year, our Garden of Giving had been giving to local community groups to hand the food out. But during that year, we realized, we have many caregivers that have been impacted by this fire. And why don't we just give the food back to our own caregivers? And that really motivated our whole team to kind of take super, pride and ownership with regards to feeding our own people. I mean, just, getting to the grassroots of it. And our whole group really focused on that. We grew 700 pounds of food and were able to feed our own caregivers. And I'm really excited to say that coming into this year with Earth Week, we're going to be doing some Earth Week events, maybe not as ambitious as we were the first year, because we're all kind of still recovering from what we've been through in these last years, but really kind of making it an outreach to our caregivers, again, more education about what's happening with regards to the We Act framework. And we're going to be having this lovely plant sale. So starter seed sale for all our caregivers. It raises money to continue our Garden of Giving and also to motivate our caregivers to grow a row at home. So grow some, got some, give some. And need it, take it is kind of our saying around here. And we'll be having our own little farmers market right in our cafe daily with the food that's coming out of that garden and the garden of our caregivers. So we're really excited about what we're doing. And I just am so happy to work with the group down here. They're so motivated, and, we're kind of small but mighty, but we're making some great change.
Thank you, Cynthia. That's so interesting. And that's a great way that you adapted to what was happening with the Almeda fire to change your planning a little bit. And also I would just point out that you're really working on the A of the We Act framework, agriculture and food. And it really matters not only for people's well-being of having healthy, nutritious, local, sustainable food, but learning to grow food in a way that's more in line with a healthy planet. Thank you for sharing. That's super, super interesting. Let me turn to Darcy in Alaska. So, I don't know how many miles that is from Medford, but it's a ways. And so it's a different experience. And also, I know that in Alaska, we have 5 hospitals in the southern region of Alaska. And you're taking more of a regional approach, really thinking about all those hospitals together. So, how are you doing that? And how are you getting people engaged and moving forward?
Yeah, great question. So I'd like to start by actually kind of reiterating what you said, Beth, and how Alaska is very far away. We have a very specific culture here that is all about taking care of each other and reuse and resourcefulness. We have that's very ingrained in our culture already. So many of our teams across all the ministries already collaborate. We have we have 2 ministries here in Anchorage, which is the biggest city, and then we have 3 that are in some more remote locations. And so, because of the dynamic of the place that we live, a lot of the resources physically have to travel in and out or through Anchorage in order to get to those smaller ministries. So again, a lot of our teams collaborate already. So we're just kind of taking that similar approach when it comes to green teams. And so um, the main campus in Anchorage has had a green team for over a decade, and we are just now involving some caregivers from some of the other ministries who are really interested in environmental stewardship as well. And the vision for this regional approach, as you can imagine, is all about idea sharing and continued resource sharing. And because we all have different needs when it comes to the day to day in each ministry. But once a month, we come together and we talk about what we're working on, success stories, our goals for the future as a region, as each ministry, things like that. And I think being able to come together, you said, how is Alaska? How are we engaging caregivers? I think it's really recognizing that we are a little bit different up here in Alaska, and there are differences between each ministry, but there's also similarities too, and so let's all work together. And my particular role as a sustainability program manager is, I think, kind of unique as well within Providence. That my role is at the region level. And so I have the privilege of not just being a participant on one green team, but many green teams, which is wonderful. And I can kind of be a conduit between them because I have a little bit more of an intimate knowledge of the inner workings of each ministry. So I know how they're similar, I know how they're different, and as you can imagine, our 1 hour region green team meeting once a month via Microsoft Teams is just not enough to share all the good work that's happening. So we are really excited to continue that work of utilizing all of the good work that's happening across multiple ministries in Alaska.
Super. That's so interesting. And I love to visit Alaska first, but I also often say if it can be done in Alaska, it can certainly be done anywhere for the kind
Mhm.
of work we're doing, from, conservation of resources to finding solutions for waste, for really being creative and innovative about how you pull things together. And then, as you say, your ministries are some of them you have to take a boat to or fly to be together. So that's
Right.
complicated as well. So good work. It's exciting to watch. So Sarah, you're in Montana, and Montana, especially St. Pat's, has had a long history of green teams and caregiver engagement. You reminded me that goes back to 1993 when we had the first record of a green team. So, what are some of the unique and interesting things you're doing in Montana?
Yeah, so our caregiver engagement really takes many forms here at Providence St. Patrick Hospital. First and foremost, we recognize that not all caregivers can engage with our material in the same way. They don't all have the same time or capacity. And so knowing that, we send out a number of newsletters monthly. We have a direct newsletter that goes straight into caregivers' inboxes that we call our Green for Good enthusiast email. People sign up for that, so they specifically get it. And then we have the council. We had 2 councils for a few years, and then kind of after the pandemic consolidated back into one. It was just easier that way. And we've had fluctuation with participation, like many people have, but we do have that strong core staff that stays engaged on the council. That's been a number of years in the making, and we've had many different ways and projects that they've done over the years. But one of the more unique ways that we've really taken on caregiver engagement the last couple of years is by using our existing education pathways, especially for clinical staff. We have what we call waste shepherds. And these waste shepherds, they're not just in clinical areas, but actually throughout the hospital. And they're the designated point person to understand our very complex waste stream and serve as a resource to their coworkers. And what we did last year is we remade education for them and we put it out through HealthStream. HealthStream is something that we're all pretty familiar with. We have to log on and complete that education. And this really formalized and elevated our environmental stewardship work. We already have a core group of staff that are really dedicated, but it just gave it one more check mark on the this is important list. And then one of the other ways, pre-pandemic, we had an annual nursing skills fair and the CNA skills fair. And we were able to have a table at that skills fair where we presented the Nurses Climate Challenge to all of our nursing staff. And they were able to ask questions, give us feedback, bring up things that they were concerned about. And it was really great face-to-face time. Of course, we have not done that since pre-pandemic, but it is something I hope we get back to in years going forward. We've also used our nursing journal club to present nursing articles or research articles that are surrounding environmental stewardship and healthcare to get that research aspect out there. Data is so important to driving this work forward. And then we have one of my favorite ways that we engage caregivers is through events, many of which are co-sponsored by our community partners. For example, we had a bicycle repair workshop where people came from Free Cycles, a local organization, and helped caregivers who showed up repair their bikes. And at the same time, we were selling bicycle helmets and lights to make those who are traveling by bicycle a little bit safer on their commute. And then I was so glad to hear about the gardening that's going on in Medford. We also have a community garden and we've taught a beginning gardening workshop from there. And we've had a garden party in the garden in the years past. And then one thing I hope we get back to again is our big, giant zero waste barbecue where all staff are invited into our cafeteria to enjoy food, some of which is local, all of which can be composted or recycled, the waste from it. But we'll have to see where we go years from now. That's our program in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you. Fabulous. And it's great to hear the smattering of different really great ideas happening around the health system. And, you all are 3 out of, well, let's see, I guess Darcy's representing 5 and Sarah's representing 2 kind of. So it won't be 50, but we have lots and lots of people around the health system who are trying to do this same work. And it's, this is, I say caregiver engagement is the secret sauce to our environmental stewardship successes. And so your work in working with caregivers, helping them be engaged, inviting and including is so important. So thank you each for that. Now we have 2 minutes. See how fast this goes? So I'm just going to do the lightning round of what is some big, bold action you hope to take coming up. It doesn't have to be this year, but something on your wish list. So let's go in reverse order. So Sarah, what would you say?
My bold action would be to continue integrating environmental stewardship into our pathways, including orientation for all caregivers coming into our hospital so that they understand that this really is something that we value and want to push forward going into the future.
Great idea. Darcy, what would you add?
Yeah, I think, gosh, I have a couple ideas, but I think really the key to this is really latching on to that culture of resourcefulness and reuse that I talked about. And it's challenging our caregivers to bring that, what they use in their personal life, really bringing it into the workplace even more than they already do. But I think something that we have to work on here, and what I'd like to work on, is really working with our green teams to challenge our leadership to invite that creativity. Because if we're all talking about these waste goals that we have, if we're talking about them on all levels of the region, that's really how we're going to move the needle. And also I'd like to use, what I would say, dare I say, the weight of a region level. So if we're trying to come up with solutions or solve problems, we're not just going to a vendor or a community partner with, hey, this is a struggle in one of our ministries. We can say, this is actually a struggle throughout the entire state. And how can we make, a bigger impact that way for a bigger benefit?
Terrific. And I would add, in some cases, it's for the whole system. So that's even another
Right.
layer of being able to use our power.
Mhm.
Thank you, Darcy. Okay, Cynthia, what would you say about a bold goal?
Well, one of the things that I'm trying to do is develop more community partners, and Rogue Valley Transportation District down here is working to get us some commuter passes, as well as I think it was Darcy that mentioned the bicycle repair day. We're trying to set that up for our Stewart Meadows clinic out here. Another thing that we're going to be doing to include more of our leadership down here and make them more aware of climate change issues in the We Act format is do an immersion event, partnering with the Southern Oregon Climate Action Now organization down here in our area, and really looking forward to that, and offering some scholarships to some of our caregivers to attend the Master Climate Protector Program to learn more kind of how Southern Oregon interacts with this whole climate change. So looking forward to those bold actions. But I also just want to remind everybody, it's not always the bold actions, it's the continuous little actions too. And I have to say that our caregivers down here are continually doing that, and always forward thinking and looking at the little things they can do to make difference at home and at work. So that's the other thing. Thank you.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. And thank you all, Darcy, Sarah, and Cynthia, for joining us today. And thank you everyone for listening. And please pay attention to our upcoming events. As a reminder, if you're looking for medical advice, please go to providence.org and make sure to follow Providence on social media at Twitter and Facebook, etc., as you can see on this slide. Thanks again. Happy Earth Day to everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.